All right, part three. Right away, Lewis pulls guard, but this time he looks to get to a shin on shin. However, his opponent is able to step to the inside, and Lewis gets back to that same half guard that he's been working from the whole time. Lewis is able to improve his position by pummeling a butterfly hook to the inside as his opponent looks to counter him with a body lock. But Lewis does a good job of keeping his elbows tight, eventually pummels in an underhook, and forces his opponent to let go of the body lock. From here, they have a little battle where Lewis looks to elevate and his opponent simply looks to get a foot back inside. And while they do this, I want to make a note of how Lewis is constantly allowing himself to be put in half guard in order to force his opponent to engage with him and then improving his position from there. I noticed that Lewis is purely defensive when he's in a knee shield. However, whenever he gets to a half butterfly or a butterfly guard, that's when he feels comfortable attacking and is immediately looking to elevate his opponent into either Kanibasami entries or simple single leg X entries. He's able to get the Kanibasami and immediately rolls his opponent into double trouble and starts attacking the ankle lock on the secondary leg to try and get a finish similar to the one he got on his first match. Now, his opponent is doing a good job of defending that secondary leg, and he's looking to simply extract his primary leg. And this wouldn't really work if it was an open rule set with heel hooks. However, since it is IBJJF and Lewis isn't allowed to touch the primary leg in any way without getting DQ'd, this escape eventually works, and his opponent is able to extract his knee line. But as his opponent gets up, Lewis simply uses the Achilles grip on the secondary leg to transition into Nashigarami, turning the secondary leg into now the new primary leg. He transitions to butterfly ashi and eventually outside ashi, but that midpoint of the butterfly ashi is actually quite important because it allows him to potentially threaten the Kaniwasami again and re-enter the other leg. But when his opponent defends that, Lewis simply throws over the outside ashi instead. From here, his opponent consistently looks to pressure through as Lewis simply keeps knocking him back down to his hip, and he's able to do this because he keeps a good Achilles grip on the primary leg. Eventually, Lewis is able to extend his opponent away, knock him down to the hips, and keep him down. From here, Lewis initially posts on his head and then builds up to a hand in order to build height on his opponent and get his 2 points. Lewis initially just keeps a good control of the primary knee in order to prevent his opponent from slipping it out and potentially threatening his back. However, he eventually starts looking for the second leg. However, his opponent starts creating some spastic movement. So Lewis decides to build some height again and look for the near side underhook to start threatening the pass instead. But Lewis's opponent goes for a very creative counter I've never seen before. He throws his leg over Lewis's head, and as he lands, he goes for a wedge bolo. Again, Lewis keeps good control of that secondary leg, brings his hips up, and it allows him to roll through with his opponent. And on the roll through, he looks to get to almost a sit through side control position, but his opponent does a good job of building height and immediately threatening octopus guard. Lewis looks to nullify this by getting a crossface, however, his opponent almost sweeps him by hitting a backwards roll. However, Lewis does a good job of rolling through and ends up on the other side with an underhook. Lewis uses this underhook to build height and stand up, and eventually is able to get his opponent into a front headlock. They fight from here for a bit, with Lewis looking for a high elbow guillotine. However, his opponent is hand fighting pretty well, and as soon as they disconnect, Lewis simply pulls guard once again. They end up in that same body lock butterfly battle. However, now Lewis is up 2 points and his opponent needs to pass in order to win. And Lewis's gallery tension is simply too good for his opponent to deal with. His opponent gives a final effort trying to aggressively knee cut past Lewis's guard. However, Lewis does a good job of simply retaining. And when his opponent sees that there's no way he's gonna pass, he simply commits to the floor and accepts defeat. Lewis opts to come up and solidifies the match with a 4-0 lead, bringing him to his third victory. And that was his third match. Thanks for watching.